Bro just doesn't know how long games are. Laughing face emoji. Laughing face emoji. Laughing face emoji. Bro is not a gamer. Finally, someone who gets it. Why stress myself out being a gamer when I can play video games just for fun? Why stress out my brain and my legally disabled eyes trying to appreciate a masterpiece I feel like I should be appreciating when I could just enjoy the slop? Actually, I've got a better name for these types of games. Plastic games. Allow me to explain. For one thing, plastic doesn't look very good. It usually looks very, very cheap. In the same way, plastic games are usually not the best looking. They usually have a mix of low poly, low quality textures, and also very, very stylized art, if you want to call it that. Take for example Crash Drive 3. Note the absence of cutting-edge PBR lighting, metallic materials, proper tire tracks, actual particulates coming out of the snow, or any sort of actual modern detail. That's not an accident. Games that were never cutting edge are never going to fall out of style. They're never going to age like modern games do. Secondly, plastic is molded. In fact, if you look at some really cheap plastic, you can sometimes see protrusions, be it from bad venting, sprue casting, or, in this case, seams. They're generally perceived as imperfections, but they are one of the characteristics of plastic. In the same way, plastic games have very simple physics models the vast majority of the time. What you put in is exactly what you get out. But because most physics aren't actually simulated, they can often be pretty easy and also pretty fun to break. A good example in this regard is Donut County. It's really very simple. You can't get much more simple than moving a hole around on a 2D plane. The game is designed that sometimes stuff can come out of your hole, but I don't think they ever intended for this. Wait, whoa, wait, that genuinely went higher than anticipated. Moving on, thirdly, plastic is typically pretty looked down on, and honestly, rightfully so. Generally speaking, plastic is a sign that something is cheap and sometimes pretty junky. Unfortunately, plastic games are often looked down on exactly the same way. They're ignored by the mass public because they're too low quality, or dare I say, slop. Anyways, you've already seen it multiple times in this video, but it's time to formally introduce TinCan Race. I've shown this game to several people in the past 8 months or so since I rediscovered it, and the response is always the same. What the heck is that? What makes it even funnier is that for the purposes of this video, I tried to get on random Discord servers and ask people for their honest opinions about the game. Nobody wanted to. Apparently it scared them away. Here's the two that I did get though. You know what? Bye.
Oh my god. Holy zoom.
Are you kidding me, bro? You know what? Bye. Wait a minute. Those people sounded entertained. It's almost like that's the point of video games. Anyways, moving on to number 4. Plastic does not biodegrade. In fact, it takes about 2,000 years for a water bottle to return to the ground. In the same way, plastic games don't lose relevance and they don't age. I was actually able to get an opinion from one third person about TinCan Race. Unfortunately, they weren't able to talk, but I asked them what year the game came from, and they said 2017. I'm not kidding. But if you want a better example, look no further than Jellycar. It was engaging to me when I was young, and it's still just as engaging to me now. It had hand-drawn looking cars and maps and human-made sounds when I was young, and it still does now. It never needed to change, because it was still relevant. But now let's talk about something a bit more serious about plastic games. The vast majority of the games that we've covered so far had a simple yet engaging and somewhat quirky gameplay loop, which was what kept people engaged. However, there are some games that go so far above and beyond that despite fitting the classifications of a plastic game, they almost don't seem to fit. Think of Wobbly Life, for example. It absolutely fits the qualifications to be a plastic game. However, there are so many things to do, So many different challenges, both physical and mental, spread out between 5 different regions on the planet, and even... Oh, wait a second, don't get mixed signals. Portal 2 is definitely not a plastic game, sorry about that. Anyways, back on topic. When you think about it, some plastics are not necessarily high quality, but they're instantly recognizable and popular. If you need a great example of that, think of maybe like a soda bottle. High quality? Absolutely not. But they're very popular due to their contents. A great example of that in the context of plastic games is Fall Guys. When you think about it, Fall Guys has every single defining characteristic of a plastic game. The predictable physics, the less than ideal visuals, the engaging gameplay loop. But what makes it not looked down on like other plastic games? Let's be honest, the competitive nature and the funding. And if you're still not convinced that plastic games can be mainstream, I have one word for you: Minecraft. Have you ever noticed how sometimes companies will etch custom stuff into their plastic? For example, these X's and O's on the back of a PlayStation DualSense controller. It seems like a lot of people feel that if a game looks simple or cheap, that it must not be good. But as we've learned in this video, that could not be farther from the truth. In fact, when you think about it, spending less time worrying about high-end graphics or simulated movement gives the developers more time to worry about what actually matters, making the game fun and adding details that reward those who look for them. That's what makes a game good. It's not the physics, it's not the graphics, it's the actual time and effort that humans have spent on making the game enjoyable. The human element. But that brings us to another important point of discussion. Have you ever noticed the little triangle that's on the bottom of most plastic containers? Did you know that that number actually indicates how many times a container has been recycled? Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, every single time plastic is recycled, those bonds weaken and the plastic gets less durable. In the same exact way, many times when a game gets popular, people are going to try to replicate it in their own way. But sometimes they lose the human element because they didn't have the same vision of how the physics were to work as the original developers. It can be hard for that game to hit the same way the original did, oftentimes being much less engaging. But as we've learned, I tend to have an unpopular opinion when it comes to criticizing games. So now let's discuss my personal 3 favorite plastic games. Number 3 is A Short Hike. It's really a beautiful game. I love the story, I love the art style, I love the mechanics. But it is one of those games, like I mentioned earlier, that is so in-depth that it almost doesn't qualify as a plastic game. I do really enjoy it though. Number 2 is Donut County. It's one of those games that doesn't really consider itself a game, more of an experience, but it is a very fun and engaging experience. And number 1, to no one's surprise, is TinCan Race. It's ridiculously fun, hilariously charming, but it earns the number 1 spot due to the one specific thing.